Our panel of break-fix petrolheads are back for another rousing what should I buy debate. Using unique shopping criteria, they are challenged to find our first-time collector the best vehicle that will make their friends go, "Where do you get that?" or "What the hell is wrong with you?" at the next Cars and Coffee.
Dear Abby, my daughter Stacy is looking for her first car and has her heart set on a Volkswagen Bug. Do you have any suggestions?
It's not uncommon for us to receive an email or text like this, one from friends or coworkers. As fathers of future petrolheads, we couldn't resist getting the band back together for yet another What Should I Buy debate.
Mind you, these messages are sometimes never more detailed than what you just heard, but it's enough to start the conversation. And like all What Should I Buy episodes, we have some shopping criteria. So obviously, the next logical questions are how old, how many miles, and what's your budget?
Tonight, we're bringing together some of the OG What Should I Buy crew: Mountain Man Dan, Rob Loers, and Mike Storytime Crutchfield. But it wouldn't be a What Should I Buy without our panelists: William Big Money Ross, Mark the Data Cruncher Shank, and Don Weberg from Garage Style Magazine.
And in this episode, our panel of extraordinary petrolheads are challenged to find our first-time driver something that will make their friends go, "Wait, you drove that at 16?" And with that, welcome back to another What Should I Buy, guys?
Welcome.
Hello.
Good to be back.
So Stacy's mom got it going on?
Yeah, and Scotty doesn't know.
Eric had alluded to off air, this is the first time I think everybody on the show is a parent.
That's right.
We are all parents, so we all are going to go through this or have gone through this at some point in our lives.
This topic resurfaces every couple of seasons, and it's like, oh man, we're going to do this again. How are we going to solve this puzzle? I found it extremely challenging in doing the research because, when we do other What Should I Buys, we're buying for fictitious collectors. We have these outrageous budgets. We're trying to add cars to our garages, and it's all glitz and glam. And then when you bring it down to earth and you're like, what would I buy my 16-year-old? I was like completely dumbfounded. It's almost like writer's block. I'm like, I don't know where to go from here. What's funny is Don gave me a call out of the blue, and he's like, hey, I'm shopping for my daughter and I'm struggling with this. Would you guys mind helping me through the thought process? And I said, oh my God, this is like the old What Should I Buy? Yeah, let's do this. Let's rock and roll. So tonight, Don's in the hot seat. He's the one with the shopping criteria, and we're trying to buy a car for his daughter. So why don't you refine your shopping criteria a little bit for us, Don? What's the budget? How old? How many miles? What are you thinking?
Okay, well, according to my wife, the budget is zero. We're not going to spend any money. We're not going to buy a car. We're going to stick to what we've got in the driveway, which is a Honda Accord, a Ford Flex, and a Caprice Classic of all things.
And a DeLorean.
Well, yeah, but I'm not going to send that to high school with her. So those are the three that would be, as Eric says, in the hot seat. I don't want the Caprice going, all original paint, everything. So I don't want that thing sitting out. The Flex is kind of a waste for that thing to go sit in a parking lot for 9 hours of the day when my wife and I are zipping all over town, and we usually have the dog with us, and the dog wears the Accord because he's just too big for it. The Accord, on the other hand, my daughter's terrified of. It's simply too quick. So she doesn't like how fast that car does everything. So she doesn't want that thing. So if my wife has her say, that'll be it. One of those three cars she picks, or she keeps getting rides from us. That said, what is the budget? I would say, no more than 10 grand. We'd love to come in under that. I grew up the son of a contractor, so my first vehicle was a 74 150. It was fly yellow. You'll be proud of that, William. Gone from being literally a contractor's truck to our runaround truck to my dad's hot rod that I got to drive to high school. Beautiful truck once my dad was done with it. I was just happy to have a car. We're of that generation. We were just thrilled. 16 years old, we got a car waiting for us, and there it is. Would I have preferred other cars? Oh, hell yeah. Absolutely. But when I got to school and all the guys saw that yellow truck and they wondered, well, what is Don driving? His dad's a contractor, so he's always had trucks around. But what is he driving? Why is it bright yellow? Who has a bright yellow contractor's truck? Oh, because this truck was retired. It's no longer in service. My sister had it before me. My dad was afraid of my sister's driving. He painted it bright yellow so that everybody would see her
It's like
coming.
that episode of Who's the Boss? Did he strap tires to the side of it too?
No, it wasn't that bad. Wasn't that bad. My dad did tell people he was worried that Holly, my sister, was a bit of an aggressive driver, a bit of an absent-minded driver, a bit of a fast driver. bright yellow to let everybody know she's coming. Now it becomes my vehicle. I like it. It's cool. It's quirky. It's a car. I don't care. I'm 16. I got a car. I'm happy. But all the guys were smitten with it. They thought it was the coolest thing in the parking lot. Look at those white wheels. Who the hell puts white wheels on a car? Well, yeah, US Mags. They still had the white wheel with the red and blue stripe around the edge. Under the hood is a 460 with a 4 barrel, with a crank. I mean, Dad built this thing out at, forget what it is now, but at the wheels, that thing was putting out somewhere around 550 horse. Now, Dan, it was a single cab, 8-foot bed with 550 horse at the wheels. This was not a friendly vehicle to a 16-year-old kid. I was scared to death of that truck because I knew what it could do. And so me alone with this beast, believe me, I was not going over 30 miles an hour going to school. I was just easing through stuff. Well, first day there, my best friend jumps in the truck, wants to ride home. Okay, this is going to be fun. Well, he sees I'm driving like a grandma. He's like, dude, punch it. Okay, well, my mom and dad told me be careful because the brake booster is failing. So you don't want to get in a situation where you have to slam on the brakes. Okay, what do you do at 16 years old when your best friend is encouraging you? You floor it. Holy Jesus wept. That thing, I could not believe the bolt. We were forced back into the seats. The rear end started barking. The rear end started fishtailing a bit. And me being the animal rights activist, a cat runs right out in front of us. I hit those brakes as hard as I can, straight down to the floor. No master cylinder, no nothing. We're just coasting along. So now I'm freaking out. I have no brakes. I've just killed a cat. I mean, I am blowing up inside. Well, my buddy, he says, cat is fine. He laid down. The truck went right over him. We're fine. How are the brakes? Well, pump them up, and you're okay. You're fine. But I'll tell you something. It scared me so bad. I took a long time to learn how to drive that truck. It was out of respect. That truck taught me, don't mess with me, kid. I'll put you around a pole. And that was important.
It taught him to respect it, and it made him gun shy.
Yeah.
And every novice driver has some point that's going to happen with. And for me, with my daughter, it actually happened before she even got her license. When we were up at pit race and did a karting event, someone nailed her hard and yelled at her, and it freaked her out. And for her, actually getting in the car to drive on the road or even getting on the track freaked her out for at least a year. Like, she was adamantly against it. And I'm like, that was karting. In a car, it's completely different.
What it demonstrates, Don, is that these first cars, sometimes not necessarily by your choice, are part of your story as a petrol head. That's what we say. Everybody has a story. Every car has a story. And so, okay, if car is just basic transportation like a bicycle or any other appliances, then it's just, oh, I had a Toyota Corolla, big deal. You know what I mean? But the adventures you had in the Corolla, like the things that allowed you to do, that's the thing that Dan and I talk about a lot, is how do we bring that to the youths and say, this is why cars are cool. It's the freedom of driving and this and go, and you can do these things. And that car took you to that place where you met those people or you did that thing. And now it's a memory, and that car is part of that memory. And so I don't want to say you want to start them off with the right car, because that's the wrong thing, but you want to get them excited about what they're going to drive. It's like, oh yeah, it's grandma's Buick 88. Like, oh, big deal. You know what I mean? There's a lot to that. And then again, that goes into that social dynamic of the car and who your friend circle was. And maybe, like you said about the truck, it drew people in because it was a point of attraction in the parking lot.
I have fond memories of pickups as being first vehicles because you can beat the hell out of them. Honestly, there's no repercussion for it. It's a truck. It's meant to take some abuse. You're going to do fine.
Well, I'm glad you opened that door, Don. So let's talk about first cars before we dive a little deeper into some of our suggestions and pick your brain on more of your shopping criteria. So, Rob, what about you? First car.
Learned on an 87 Volkswagen Vanagon GL Synchro.
My man.
With a manual transmission, but the first car I bought myself was an 8-valve Scirocco from 85.
See, this is why we bring Rob to the party.
Yeah, I'm noticing a little bias here with the Germans, with Rob and Eric. And then there's Mark in the background scouring at me.
Yeah, so Mark, what about you? What was your first car?
89 Chevy Cavalier. It's a good car. It's kind of an American turd, but it was a good car. I have genuine affection for it. The first one I really loved was a 94 Z28. Very different kind of car at that point.
William, what about you? First car?
1983 Mazda GLC hatchback.
Oh, my man. My man.
Yeah, 5-speed.
Brad, I remember your first car.
It was a 1991 red Honda Civic hatchback with 4 on the floor.
Since nothing ever leaves the mountain, I'm sure your first car is still up there. Dan, what was it?
Actually, it's not here.
What?
Are we talking first owned car or first car that actually was put on the road and driven?
Oh my God.
Dan still owns all of his first cars.
My point.
You thought my story was going to be long?
The first one that was yours, Dan. If you considered it yours, then it counts.
They were mine. So the first car I had was a 64 Chevy 2 Nova that I was in the process of fixing up. And then unfortunately found I got on hard times and had to sell it. First car I actually put on the road was actually a 82 Toyota Corolla.
They could not be any more different, those two.
Yeah.
And I'll round it out. I had an 87 Audi Coupe with the 5-speed. I had the weirdest car in the parking lot at high school, that's for sure.
I don't know that's that much weirder than the Scirocco, just to be clear.
Everybody knew what a Scirocco was, though.
Yeah.
Everybody knew what a Scirocco was, knew what an Audi Coupe was. At least I did. All my friends did.
Back then, Audis were in the doghouse. Nobody had Audis.
Exactly. And our resale value was printed right across the grill, all zeros, worth nothing.
Being the weird car driven by the weird kid at school worked out.
Yeah, I know, right? It's great. Dan, when you and I were preparing for this and talking about this, you made a very good point about the shopping criteria and kind of bracketed it using the way we do our new What Should I Buy episodes, which is 3-tier. The parents assisting in the purchase, the 16-year-old buying it themselves and funding it through, side hustles and part-time jobs and things like that, or the silver spoon option. So I kind of wondered, with your first cars, how many of you guys bought it yourselves?
Bought mine myself.
Okay, so that's 2. How many were a hand-me-down?
Aye.
Okay, so that's 2 more. And then our parents bought it for us? Okay, and that's the rest of us. And then there's William. Okay, so that rounds us out. So we're kind of evenly split amongst those 3 options that you mentioned, Dan. So Don, this kind of leads back to you. How do you want this to work out? Do you want her to work for the car? Do you want to gift her a car? Your wife wants to spend $0.
Yeah, honestly, I think how it'll work is, if I get my way and she doesn't end up in the Caprice or the Flex, Michelle and I'll buy a car for her, and it'll just be one of those ex-rental Buicks or something that we can afford, that she can beat up, learning how to not hit curbs, things like that. I think it would just be something like that. Now, that said, she herself, Caitlyn, is a bit of a car girl. She has a penchant for the modern VW Beetles. She loved Beetles, period. She doesn't care how old they are, but she definitely has more of an interest in the newer Beetles. Outside of that, it basically goes a little wonky. She starts loving 50, 51 Hudson, like Doc Hudson. She really starts getting into the Corvettes, which I think that's probably me. She loves everything we have, the Fiat, the Mustang, the DeLorean. The Caprice has long been one of her favorites. Literally ever since she was a little girl, she's just been a little gaga for the Caprice. And she would love to take that to school. And we've actually talked about finding another brick to join this brick. And she has my flavor a little bit with the Bhagwan paint. Definitely interested in having a little fun with hippie schemes or things like that. Part of me says, yeah, an old brick would be perfect for that. And then there's another part of me that's like, those bricks are starting to dry up and they're starting to gain in some value a little bit. Getting a little harder for me to say, yeah, go ahead, honey, go take that brick and screw it up.
Leads into another question, which is the next logical conclusion. And I'm sure I'm going to get a church nod from this one, is the maintenance part of this aspect, which is a lot of things a first-time driver forgets about. It was sort of the bill I was handed when I got my first car. It's like, we're going to buy you the car, and here's a bag of wrenches, and you're on your own after that point. So I was there to figure out how to pay for my insurance, anything that broke. If I wanted to do mods, it was on me. And it always seemed like on the Audi, the magic number was like $1,100. Every time I turned around, I had to come up with $1,000 to replace suspension or do exhaust or whatever, because it was a 10-year-old car by the time I got it, right? So it needed everything. What's your thought there? Is she going to go to work to pay for that stuff? If something breaks, is it, hey, Dad, I'm on the side of the road? How is that going to play out for you guys?
It's funny, that kind of brings us right into a secondary point that I always concerned about. In my family, we were car people. We grew up cars. We had, my God, at any given time, there were 10 cars hanging around the house. We just had the ones that were specific to us that we drove every day. But they were all, except for my mom and my dad's dailies, all of them were old. They were all in some form of disrepair. It's interesting, as I went through life, I had fun with that. I bought the Fiat, I bought tons of Lincolns, tons of old Dodges, tons of whatever I could get my hand on. And this is where I start to sound a little un-car guy. Earned up a ton of cash. I mean, just burned through it like a wildfire. And looking back, one of the last old cars was supposed to be a Mercedes that belonged to my grandmother. Things didn't go right with me and my grandfather, so I ended up not buying the car. But I ended up with a very slightly used Toyota 4x4 pickup. Absolutely gorgeous, bright red, the whole 9 yards. That car got me through 15 years, something like that. I don't even know. But it got me through everything. Got me through 3 colleges, got me through God knows, how many friends, relationships. Hey, Don, what are you doing this weekend? I'm doing something else. The keys are on the shelf. I don't want to help you move. That was the only problem with having a pickup. I'm sure Mountain Man Dan can attest to that as well. But what resonated with me was the Mercedes was a 73. There's no way in hell that Mercedes would have gone through everything that Toyota went through day in, day out, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it hit me how little money I spent on that truck. Yes, there was the cost of it. That was one of the ones, my parents were going to buy it. I had to come up with the money. I had to make the payments. I was working at Paramount. Everything was good. So I was fine. But I think when all was done, interest, everything, I think I was out the door 17,000 and change. So $18,000 for that truck. And yet look at everything it got me through. Trouble free. I put one set of tires on that truck. One. That's it. I put no brakes on that truck. None. I always took it to the dealer because I was my father's worst nightmare. Never put brakes on the truck. Always downshifted. It needed one clutch, so that kind of makes sense. No brakes, but I replaced the clutch. Still, total everything up in that truck. I didn't spend all that much money to get me through to the next vehicle, which was the Australian GTO, which was another absolutely fantastic car, but we'll go into that another time. So the thought is, much as I'd love to get her an old Beetle or an old Caprice to screw around with, I remember the thought of how well the Toyota served me. And I look at her and I think, okay, you're just starting high school. Let's go screw something up. Let's get the wrecks out of our system. Let's get that and do that with some old jalopy that's not going to bother anybody if you wreck it. But I live, and this is another part of the equation we need to take in very seriously. I have never seen worse drivers in my life than where I live right now.
Where are you?
The Dallas area, Dallas Fort Worth.
But every road is 7 lanes wide and dead straight.
Pretty much. They are extremely emotionally driven, no pun intended. But what they love to do is get right on your back bumper. We all love the littler cars. They're fine, they're fun, they're enjoyable all the way. But yeah, it does have to do with you drive those things around here, you're going to get bullied.
I towed the track trailer with the Miata everywhere I went. It would be hilarious to be next to someone's like perfectly normal SUV and think like they can't see me at all. I am below the window line of the visibility of that 18-year-old who doesn't know what they're doing in their mom's Caravan, right? Yeah. So there's a fear factor to saying like, get a BRZ or get a TC or Miata. Like there's a fear factor.
Yeah. What's funny though, you bring that up the rearview mirror. I can't see the Miata if it pulls up close enough to the Flex's rear end.
Yep.
You can't see it. You cannot see that car. So yeah, there's a definite fear factor of those little cars.
So you need to roll coal so you can throw giant black. Yeah, it's, you can start rolling coal and they'll back off pretty fast.
Right. Now, being from LA, it is a different driving style in California, period, compared to Texas. All the way around. So I had to relearn, okay, how are these guys expecting me to drive? It kind of helped adapting to how they do things. But this is God's honest truth. We had a friend visiting us, Sarah, 2 years ago, something like that. She came out for a weekend visit. In that 3 days that she was with us, 9 car wrecks, 9 that we counted just in Mansfield, which is the exact town where I live. They are scary out here. They're very emotional. Most of them drive massive pickup trucks with bumpers that weigh as much as the DeLorean itself. Pure steel sitting out there just waiting to topple something. This is where the Flex is really, really fantastic because it's not huge. It's not a Suburban, but it's got that bulldog sense to it. You know it's there. You know it's big. You know it's heavy. It's going to fight back if you nudge it. People know that. You put the Accord on the road, my God, you're getting bullied left, right, and center. They just cannot wait to shove you out of the way. Even if you're in the slow lane doing 80, and I'm not kidding you, 80 out here is sort of the beginning of this is our freeway speed. They just fly out here. So it's very unsafe. Bottom line. So when I look at the Beetle, when I look at even the Caprice, even though the Caprice is a solid piece of work, no airbags, it's very unforgiving. In a wreck, it's really not going to be your best friend. So I keep looking at vehicles that are a bit safer, a bit more solid, a bit more robust. But my thought is I'd love for her to have a car that's going to see her, assuming we go to college, at least get her halfway through her college education. And fortunately, we're in this era right now. You go back to the 90s, some of these cars are tanks, the way they were engineered, because safety was a huge concern for everybody.
I do think that you have to think seriously about crash safety standards and how they matured, which challenges a lot of the cars from the 90s. Post 98, there was a big change in the crash safety standards, and that's why a lot of those cars got heavier after that.
Hope that gives you a few of the parameters we're thinking about.
All of us are in different parts of this journey, right? Even as fathers of petrol heads. So you're right in the middle of this. Rob's right behind you. Dan just went through this, and so did William. And then obviously Brad, Mark, and I are still on the front end of this, catching up with you guys. So what I want to do is turn it to Dan and to William to say, with your girls, what did you go through? What was some of your thought process? What were the considerations that you made for your daughters picking their first car?
Being in Ohio, 1, 4-wheel drive, 2, safety. It's not like we get in blizzards every other week or something like that, but it gets pretty shitty.
When it snows, it doesn't snow here, it just gets ice. That's all we get. We just get ice.
Ice doesn't matter if you got 6-wheel drive. Doesn't matter. You're going to slide.
Now, frankly, I had a ball learning how to fishtail and learning how to correct in my old truck. I thought that was more fun than anything. You got that light rear end out there. It's going to be a little weird, but times have changed. You know, the police are not so open-minded about a young person learning how to correct the skid and things like that.
But the big thing was for me was just the 4-wheel drive. Kind of like how Don's saying, you know, where he's at. Your child's a new driver. They're not really adjusting themselves to environment and how they should be driving or whatnot. It's more like they're just freaking out, going, oh, shit. Okay, what's going to give them the most sense of calmness so they feel safe? We had a 2014 Acadia just sitting there. So she wasn't fond of it because of the size, but she got accustomed to it. She got used to it, as what you do with anything. And then she could tote her friends all around and everything like that. But for her, it worked the best. We lucked out. So that's what I had sitting there.
The initial plan was to get an older vehicle to restore with her, so she'd know every nut and bolt, but unfortunately, budget didn't allow that to happen for what she wanted. So she wound up commandeering one of my trucks, and that's what she drives the majority of the time. And I have a car here that she'll eventually start driving once she gets a little bit better driving manual. Surprisingly, she's really taken to my dually, and every chance she gets, she steals that from me. It's good having her in a bigger vehicle, but at the same time, it's scary because I tell her all the time, like, the dually's a lot wider than the other vehicles. You hit something, you're paying for it.
I say the same kind of crap. Are you really going to bankrupt your child if they hit something with your dually? Because they can't afford that.
Yes.
Luckily not, but I'll definitely get some sweat labor out of her if she were to wreck it.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. All right. Honest answer. I appreciate that.
There'll be a lot of cursing, that's for sure.
But the thing is they don't realize that. So it's a valid threat. It's a valid threat. They don't appreciate the reality of the situation. You're just trying to make a threat that registers. I get it.
Is the truck that she does use, is that a manual or automatic?
It's an automatic. It's actually a 86 Chevy K10 4-wheel drive square body.
Don, is manual an option, or that's off the table right now? Automatics only, right?
It'll go either way.
Okay.
Caitlyn and Michelle both want to learn how to drive stick shift. So now that the Fiat's back and now that the weather's getting a little better, we do have plans to go out in the neighborhood and run the Fiat around and learn how to do that. So we'll go either way.
I want to ask, for the two of you who've already gone through this, were your choices and criterias based on your experience with your first cars, or what you wanted to correct from what you felt happened in your first one? Because my current thought with my kids are very different for very different reasons. So I really want to hear what's going through there on that side.
I wanted to get her a small car. It was a 5-speed or something. You know, she could learn how to drive stick in that. But it was weird because she wanted to get her driver's license, but she was really nervous and scared about driving. I think it was probably 5 or 6 months that she had her license before she even got on the highway.
Did she learn from you or from your wife or from elsewhere?
My wife. I got zero patience. I helped her a little bit with the maneuverability stuff, kind of learning that. But other than that, no, she always went out with my wife.
Okay.
I was putting my foot through the imaginary break in the floor in the passenger seat all the time. And it would drive her nuts. She's like, stop that. Like I said, I wanted to get her a manual. Thought was, okay, hand on the steering wheel, hand on the gears lever. She's moving. She can't be on her phone, you know, that kind of stuff. As a kid, though, you'll figure it out. I did. we all did that had a manual. You figured it out how to drive with big gulp, whatever, and everything like that.
Texted with manuals with a 9-key phone,
With
right?
T9.
You're younger than I am. I had already long since learned to drive before like the first car phones were installed.
Yeah, it's a rite of passage to learn how to drive with your one knee.
Yes, the one knee thing I still do. My kids in the backseat will be like, "Dad, what are your hands doing?" I'm like, "I'm busy eating this." And my knee's got control of the car. You're fine.
Somebody just said it, and I think it was William. You do sort of get comfortable with the car. You do sort of figure out the idiosyncrasy of the car.
So, Dan, if you want to answer the same question that William answered.
No, the automatic just mainly happened as to what was here, but having her drive a manual is definitely a requirement I had for her. Surprisingly, the first manual she drove was my race car up at Pit Race a couple years ago, and I was amazed that she didn't stall it out with the clutch that's in it. She's gotten better with manuals where she even has a dirt bike and stuff like that she rides. But initially, she wanted an old Volkswagen book. And then probably when she was about 12 years old, that changed, and she decided she wanted an old 50s model truck. But unfortunately, I couldn't find one in decent enough condition for the prices they were asking.
Yep.
Because initially I was going to get her the vehicle for her 13th birthday, and I was going to give us 3 years to rebuild it. And my biggest concern was her knowing how to work on the vehicle if something happened, she broke down alongside the road. It was more along the fact of her being a female and not having someone come take advantage of her not knowing the vehicle than whether it was manual or automatic, car or truck.
Yeah, makes sense.
With the truck, I've taught her damn near everything on it, and she's been around square bodies since she was little because I've owned them since before she was born. It's one of those things, luckily, that generation of GMs in general, whether it be car or truck engine-wise, are very similar if it's a small block.
So, Rob, all that being said, where's your head at?
So going back to sort of what William said, it's definitely manual. I mean, my first driving experience was taking the whole family to upstate New York in that Vanagon manual, and it was the first time I had driven the car, in any car. And I just remember, like, getting on the highway was fine, and then I get to these stoplights, and at one point, I was in the middle of New York somewhere. I couldn't get it started again in first. Turns out I was in third, finally figured it out. But I had cars behind me, swearing, swinging around you and doing everything. Looking back, like, I loved that fear factor, because that fear factor like gave you a sense of what a privilege more than a right it is to drive and to have to understand how the car works and how everything works in order to drive it. And it wasn't an appliance, right? It wasn't like I hit the power button on my electric vehicle and step on the gas and it's just going to go. It was, no, I need to know how to do a few things and sort of earn the respect of this is how a car works and how I interact with other people on a road. And I loved that experience. I have the GTI now and I've considered getting something different. And I'm like, nope, either that or a Golf or something in that realm is what I want my kids to learn on. Whether I want that to be their first car is different. I think it's a little too quick, but my head is 100% on it has to be a manual. I don't want an automatic. Even now, right, I have friends who are like, oh, can I borrow your car? I'm like, you don't know how to drive stick. You can't help. Like I got a buddy who drives stick, but his wife doesn't. And whenever we try to trade off cars, it's like this mental gymnastics. I'm like, no, my kids need to learn how to drive stick.
I agree with you there because I've always subscribed to the idea that if you learn how to drive a manual, then you can pretty much drive anything, whether it's a tractor or a truck or a motorcycle. If you understand the mechanics of how a manual transmission works, it's not just about the car you have, but also older cars too. Because if you end up in the collector world, or if somebody goes, hey, let's go for a spin and my old 911 SC, well, you look down, you go, well, that's an interesting anti-theft device.
Yeah.
You got to learn what the three pedals do, and it makes you a better driver. And I agree with William with the distracted driving thing too. I mean, yes, you can defeat that, but realistically, you're more situationally aware when you drive a manual because there's more things you have to physically do when you're driving. So I'm with you on all that stuff.
When I got to college, I ended up driving buses. I drove transit buses, and I ended up being an instructor of new students who came in, and even driving buses. And again, we're driving those big transit buses around Western Massachusetts. All the training was done on manual transmission, double clutching school buses. And so we got kids who had never driven a stick before that are coming in like, I want to learn how to drive buses. And they watch bus drivers with automatics and they're like, wait, I got to learn this. Every one of them, by going through that learning process, I would put up the drivers that we had, even in college, as college kids, right, who were just all a bunch of punks. We would go to these bus rodeos and we would always finish in the top part because we were one of the few groups in New England that would mandate only manuals for instruction purposes.
Manuals with no synchros. That's
correct.
A big difference relative to what people deal with today.
Right.
Oh, 100%.
And I feel like even seeing it at the college level just made a huge difference in the abilities of all the drivers. But coming out of driving manual Volkswagen buses and stuff, like I didn't find it to be that big a deal because I understood the mechanics of it. It was pretty easy.
Sure.
Really want to get a 3 on the tree.
Yeah.
Oh boy. Or a deux chevaux with that umbrella handle in the dashboard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And And that first VW bus, even like those Bannigan synchros have so much low end torque that, like, once we figure out the gear thing, like, you don't even need the gas. You just slowly release the clutch and it'll go 10 miles an hour fine. And so, like, it's an easy car to learn on. That was kind of a fun aspect of it too. But yeah, that's where my head's at, was purely got to be manual. I want it small. I worry about, and this might be a cultural thing, I worry about a vehicle that has too much people storing ability, because I know that my kids will easily get, 6 kids in the back going crazy, and boom, you're going to have it. Like, the one accident I ever had at my entire life as a kid was driving the bus back from an ultimate frisbee term with 5 people in the car, and everyone's talking and chattering, and I'm like, okay, yep, I'm fine. And end up sideswiping a guardrail as you just get distracted from all the people. And it wasn't phones or stereos, it's the people. And so I'm a big fan of, like, 2 doors, tight cars, smaller cars. Like, I had the Scirocco, and it was one of those, like, you got to work to cram 4 people and none of them are happy, but I want less space. And so, like, the idea of a pickup is great, because yes, as they get used to it, they put 7 kids in the back to go drive into the mountains to go do stuff, fine. But the drive into school and back, you're not picking up 7 people. You don't have people throwing stuff in the back and distracting you. So you're actually a less distracted driver with having less people capacity in the car.
It's a very valid point you sort of tripped over here, because Don and I talked about this off air. There's a sociological aspect to your first car. And do you want to be the cool kid from 90210 with the ZR1 Corvette and everybody goes, ooh, look at him, he's the next James Dean? Or are you suddenly the designated driver because you have mom's old minivan? And to your point, you can tote around 9 or 10 of your drunk friends and you're never having any fun at the party. Not saying that you should be doing that.
Don't drink anymore.
But there's sort of this now social dynamic that builds around your first car, because Rob's the guy with the van. We're going to go ask Rob. And to Don's point, well, you got the pickup. Can you help me move? And you're like, I don't want to do that. So to your point, choosing that first car actually puts your kid into a weird social swim lane. And I think you need to be careful about what you choose based on their personality, based on who their friends are. Again, this is why I said at the beginning, this is a very challenging subject, because I never realized how many layers there were to buying a car, especially a first car.
So I have to disagree a little bit with the social impact there, Eric. Compared to when we were getting our license, we were like dead set wanting it the day we were allowed to. Today's generation is not as pressed to get their license. And my daughter wanted to get hers, but it was like, it wasn't near as much as me. I was like out the gates running as fast as I could. My daughter's just nonchalantly walking to get hers, basically. And I've noticed more and more, especially dealing with all her friends, they don't care as much what the car is as we did, which is surprising, because it's like a completely different dynamic to the way we looked at cars compared to how they look at them now. And I'm not sure how your guys' kids are with how it might change by the time yours are getting their license, Eric, because that's a couple years.
I agree. It feels almost European in the sense that you used to say Americans were house, car, clothes, and Europeans were clothes, house, car in priority of spending, just kind of like a stereotype. When not a lot of kids get their license, the fact that you have your license in a car in and of itself makes you unique. It doesn't matter what the hell drive, period, end of story. And so the fact that you have a car stands out when you're 16 or 17 years old in a modern context, where we went from 70 to 80% of 16-year-olds getting licenses down to it's like something like under 40% or whatever today. I think if you're on this podcast, you obviously enjoy automobiles and you'd rather your kid's first car be an NA or NB Miata. Look, it's just 2 of you and it's a manual and it's a little car. But SUVs and pickup trucks are a thing, and I don't want my kid to die. So that's probably not going to be their first car.
But there's the other side of this too, Mark, where I look at some of the kids that are driving around the schools that our kids go to, and I'm like, I would kill for the hand-me-downs that they're getting. I mean, you're driving your dad's old 5 Series? Like, seriously? I had a $2,000 piece of crap, and that was expensive back then. You know what I mean? So I look at some of these other cars, and I'm like, you have got to be kidding me. But there's a social dynamic to that too. Even if you're receiving a 10-year-old BMW, it's a 10-year-old BMW. It's like, holy cow, that's a good car by the standards of cars that we drove. So it's really awkward. It's really strange. And I'm not jealous, but on the same token, to your point, I want my kids to have like a cool car. But to Rob's point, I don't want it to be so good that then everybody wants to be on the party bus. You know what I mean?
It's tricky.
I do think for me, the killer feature for a 16-year-old, I'm going to say dumbass kid lovingly for my own children, would be auto braking. And if you look at who's out there and who has good systems that can hit the brake on a car before your kid actually hits the brake on the car, Toyota does really well. Obviously, Tesla does really well, as much as we love to hate. You know, I'm one of those haters too. Fine, fair enough. Put me out there. But they do well in that camp.
The Subarus do pretty well on that too. The newer EyeSight ones. You can get a Forester, which is a similar vehicle to a lot of this.
But the newer ones, they got good at that in the last 5 years or so, at least according to my reading.
I would agree, but you can get a 5-year-old Forester for starting to get into this range because people bought them as appliances.
And so you have to start thinking about the killer app of what's really going to be a big safety mechanism for that distracted kid who's maybe listening to their friends, as we've talked about, in the back, or they're getting a text message or Spotify notification on their phone.
The other aspect besides that, which I hate to even mention because I'm not a fan of this and kids are sort of forbidden from phones for a reason, right? And it's only in the newer cars, making sure it has a head unit with CarPlay, being able to abstract the need to look at a phone, any of the newer ones, right? You hit a button and it just reads you what the text message is. And you can, do you want to reply? You just say, yes, tell Jill LOL or something. And it just does it for you. And they never need to actually reach down and pick up a phone and take their eyes off of the road. To that point, that's also a feature that we haven't even discussed at all, right? Which is more whiz bang. So there's the distraction, but it removes the, I'm going to physically pick this thing up and do this to answer my question, as opposed to just hit a button on a big giant screen in the center of the console.
It's not whiz bang to say, hey Siri, give me directions to school or give me directions to home.
Right.
In Apple CarPlay or Google Android is infinitely better at that than the OEM systems. And you look at where generative AI is coming in relative to Apple coming out with, there's going to be huge advancements there. Siri replying to me right now mid-podcast because I made the mistake of saying her name. And that's something we haven't talked about either, which is if you really want to eliminate distracted driving, is AI a component of that? And the ability to have legitimate natural language interpretation and just say what you want your car to be able to do, and it gives you those directions or it responds to you in that kind of way. And is that inherently more safe? I think there has to be some legitimacy to that. I do think that CarPlay as a platform will help older cars be better at that very quickly, because you put a more modern iPhone plugged into an older Apple CarPlay implementation, it will inherit those capabilities. And so that will be a big boon to these kids in this type of situation.
A lot of it depends on where you are, too. That was going to be my next question for Don as we try to get closer to the actual answer, right? Is like, I live in the city. I live in Capitol Hill. My kid is walking to middle school or biking to middle school every day, and the high school is closer than the middle school, like if he goes to the local one, right? So no one needs a car around here. Now, that said, my kids know that I'm a gearhead, that I work on, like the GT I have is because I taught a friend how to do everything, and my kids ardently watched. And my kid's biggest joy is like getting onto an on-ramp and seeing if I can get the car sideways on an off-ramp. And my kids love that stuff, right? So they're going to learn to drive the moment they can. They're going to want me to, thank God, get back to doing track days, and so I can bring them out and have them start learning. So I'm excited for that to happen. But their commuting side isn't going to be there, right? So like in my case, I could totally make their first car an NB Miata. The only purpose of this is to drive to an autocross spot or drive to a track day and then work on car control skills and drive home, because their day-to-day life through high school at least isn't going to involve a car.
You hit the nail on the head. Through high school, and Don sort of alluded to this earlier about the weather. One of the things that I was thinking about is don't buy a car for your current situation, especially with a 16, 17, or 18-year-old. Maybe they're starting to drive a little bit later. If they're going off to college, think about the climate in that area. If you're going to the middle of the country, going to Ohio, where William is, or you're going to New England, where it's going to snow, not inches, but feet, you don't want to show up with a Miata in the wintertime when you're in school, because you're going to be bumming rides from your friend with the Toyota 4x4. If you're going to Florida, then a convertible's perfect. Think about where they're going to be going and make the car buying part of maybe the college selection process. These are other parts that suddenly made the equation way more complicated than, man, I'm really interested in an 82 Trans Am. It's way more dynamic than buying a collector car.
I mean, we can end it right now because there's one car
Oh boy,
that fills every bill. Every bill is filled by one car, and that is the 89 Chrysler TC by Maserati.
I thought you were going to say the Cadillac Alante. Why is that not on your list? You should buy her an Alante.
The Alante is a wonderful car, but yeah, it's a little ostentatious. The Chrysler is a little more sedate,
A little more
Got Chrysler's
understated.
on my list. And what's funny is we were hinting at the younger kids, like me and Mark and Brad, right? What are they going to be driving 6 years from now? Let's say that, because they're all in that, 10-year-old range. Except for Brad's kids, you're catching up a little bit more.
Yeah, I think the car that my kids are going to drive hasn't been built yet. It's not around yet.
Well, you're hitting it right on the head. So my math is always what was available new 10 years from the date that they're going to start driving. So if we're looking at 2024, we need to start talking about what was available in 2014, plus or minus a year, 2013 to 2015, in that range.
I consider those new cars, by the way, just to be clear. I'm old enough that if somebody handed me a 2014, I'd be like, that's the newest car I've ever seen, like ever owned.
But Don gave us a number, 10 grand. So we have some wiggle room to play with.
Even when looking at under 10K, there are so many really cool cars out there.
Yeah.
And I actually love that they think, your modern Accord is too fast. So it's like, great, let's go back to the 90s when everything didn't have 280 horsepower. There's just so many cool things out there. This is going to be a lot of fun.
I need you to put on your thinking caps here, boys. I need you to think of something that ain't going to get bullied around in the bathroom.
So who wants to take a stab at some suggestions for Don in the 10,000 and under category within, let's say, maybe the last 10 years? And if you got something outside of the 10-year window, I am curious.
My default was to go so much older than 10. So I'm really saying, if I'm going back to 2014, I'm saying 2014 and 10 grand. Is that what I'm looking at?
Yeah.
Right.
And there are cars that ended their lives in 2014. So it's very fair to say, I'm going to get the 2002 version of that because it spanned the whole gamut up to 2014. So you can still kind of get the last version of that old car, which is actually a very smart thing to do if you're a conscientious buyer. So I'm leaving a little bit of wiggle room, but I think the further you go back, the more problems you may run into with a new driver in a super old car.
I think that's totally fair. Man,
it's tough.
I mean, the nice thing, though, for him is that being in Texas, you obviously have a very broad range of where you can go around finding a car. But two, you don't have to worry so much rust and that stuff. Car's not going to get beat up all that much in regards to stop and go and that because you're out there in the wide open spaces. Higher mileage isn't really something to be too afraid of.
And I spent way too much time on cars.com in this category. I'm going to throw one out. I'm going to chum the water for you guys, and then I'll let you guys rip from there. And I know that Don is a huge fan of the Ford Flex, and he talked about maybe getting a second one because Caitlyn loves his Ford Flex, but he doesn't want to give up his, so he'd have to get another one, sort of like the Caprice thing, right? But Don, for your consideration, might I offer you, for the low, low price of $8,500, a Lincoln Mark T with the EcoBoost, which is just a Ford Flex with leather.
Yeah, that would work. The only thing, and this happened to mine just recently, and I just found out about the water pump on the 3.5 liter Ford and perhaps even the 3.7 liter. I'm not sure yet. The water pump on these 3.5 liter Fords is internal inside the engine. So when it pops, I have the receipt somewhere. It was $4,100 to repair mine. It's not so much the part and getting into the motor and changing it out. That's not the problem. The whole front end has to come off. The whole car basically comes apart when you do the water pump.
That's not true for every car?
Yeah, right.
As somebody who belongs to the Audi club and owns Volkswagen, I thought the front end had to come off for all that stuff anyways, in every car.
Service position is engine out.
I was going to say, isn't that normal? I thought that was normal. I've seen people do that during a track day. They pull off the whole front end of the Audi to check the water pump.
We won't talk about that, but it is true.
What else I found what was interesting is 3.5 liter in the F-150 because the engine is mounted longitudinally. It's a different water pump. Okay, so they only put it internal for the front wheel drive packaging because it's going to be narrower, fitting between fenders rather than firewall and grill. So that's apparently where the thinking was. So if you get an F-150, you're going to be okay with that V6. But yes, to your point, the MKT, the Flex, both of them are great vehicles. You just got to be prepared for when that water pump needs to be replaced.
That was what I call my cheap chic choice. If you wanted to have something a little classy and go back to Lincoln. But I also will throw in there, and I didn't realize that the bottom had fallen out of these cars. And my wife owned one, is the Cadillac SRX. You can get one of those for around $6,500 to $8,500, like the Lincoln. I saw Lincolns in that range as well. And the Cadillac was great. The only thing we experienced with it that was bad was their Q system, which is the infotainment thing. It would go numb But other than that, the Camaro motor that's in it was rock solid. The all-wheel drive was fantastic. It's a Hallback system from the UK. We had zero issues with the bunch of years that we had the Cadillac, but finally, when we got rid of it, the infotainment system, which controlled the HVAC, which was the bigger issue, started to get wonky. And that's a very expensive replacement. It's almost $8,000 to include labor because they have to rip basically the whole front of the interior apart. If you get one that was blessed that doesn't have the defect, then those cars are amazing and they're a lot of fun and they're funky. They're like the tall CTS.
Too fast.
Yeah, it's true. 330 horse in that.
Throw my 2 cents in. Manual diesel Jetta.
100 horsepower, baby.
Those are the newer, the TDI ones are quick as hell though off the line.
New ones, but we're talking old one. We're talking, 2012, 2014-ish, 110 horsepower, I think, something like that.
A lot of torque at the low end though.
But that thing will run forever. If you want something that's going to get her all the way through college, there you go. Those things are bulletproof.
But time out. The only thing I wouldn't do to a kid going through this experience myself, I would never recommend a German car, especially a VAG product, to a 16-year-old.
In Texas.
The funnier part of this is that it's diesel, which means they're always going to go to the wrong pump and they're going to screw that part up first. Let's to be clear.
First time my daughter took the dually, which is a diesel, and she's used to driving the half-ton, which is gas. I'd called her for something right as she pulled up to the gas station, and she's like, "Yeah, I'm about to throw gas in the truck." I'm like, "You're about to put what in the truck?" She's like, "Gas." I'm like, "You better put diesel in it." And she's like, "Oh yeah." Had I not called her at that point, there would have been full tank of gas in my diesel truck, and I would have hated life. I love my diesels, but for a kid that age, sometimes they're a little bit absent-minded.
I agree. My older one has ADHD.
Keep it simple.
Keep it simple. It's got to be gas. Or for Brad's kids, electric at that point.
And that's why the Mark T, the reason I brought that up first is it breaks my sort of rule. No turbos for first drivers, because that adds a layer of complexity that doesn't need to be there. And I don't want to have to explain forced induction or repair it or why is it run like crap and all that kind of stuff. So for me, it's got to be normally aspirated. And I think, Rob, you made kind of the side comment about Volkswagens in Texas and this and that. Dealership network or repair shops, it's got to be something domestic or domestically built. So we're talking Honda, Toyota, the big three, and maybe a couple other cars where there's a decent dealer network. Again, going back to my thought about where are they going to college, because suddenly you find yourself in Utah and it's like you're the only gal in town with a Beetle, and they're like, well, that's a pretty car. Where are you going to get that worked on? So you don't want to be in that situation. I'm making a gross generalization, but it's another piece of this puzzle that you have to factor in is where can you get the car serviced when you're not home with mom and dad?
All of my trips back to California with the family, I've never counted them, I don't think, but it was always really nice. You're busting on the freeway, the Ford Blue Oval, the Ford Blue Oval, the Ford Blue Oval. There's dealerships all along the way. And right across the freeway, well, there's the Chevy bow tie. Either way, Chevy Ford seemed to be kind of the best way to go in terms of servicing. I mean, you got to think we are a traveling family. We go back to LA, we go to El Paso, we go up north to Kansas. So it is sort of something we need to take into consideration too is, if that puppy breaks down somewhere in the middle of the country, we're hoping that, there's a dealer network to take care of it. Now, Volkswagen, I'd have some confidence in. They've got a pretty good dealer network.
They're pretty big these days, yeah. Them and Subaru are actually more places than you think now.
Yeah.
Like you can be in the middle of podunk nowhere and there's a Subaru dealership and a VW dealership. Like those are becoming ubiquitous, similar to Ford, Chevy.
So many parts share in the Volkswagen group.
Yeah.
I don't mean to disagree with Eric, but it feels like a little bit of a 90s kind of maybe a noughties point of view.
Old fashioned.
If we're saying we're looking within the last decade, there's so much part sharing in Volkswagen Group has alternated around the largest by volume manufacturer in the world.
Right. You have a Golf or a Jetta or a Passat or this or that, or all those things use the exact same parts.
That 10-year-old Beetle is basically a Golf.
Which is the same as a Jetta, which is the same. Yeah, all those things are swappable.
All of that is true, but here's the problem with the German cars. I know this firsthand. When they break, even though they're all the same part breaks on all of them. It's a stupid reason that it broke, and then it's idiotically expensive to replace and to service.
I disagree. You end up learning yourself how to do it. Like I remember driving home in that Scirocco in a rainstorm, replacing an alternator on the side of the highway. It was like one of those rites of passage. It was kind of fun.
Because you could, Rob, but do that on a 2014 GTI. You don't have the Schwaben XYZ tool necessary to take the alternator out now.
Other than that, the Scirocco had parts that were actually made of like cast aluminum or metal and stuff like that. A lot of these new
It's all plastic.
It's all plastic and plastic. Yeah.
Eric and I know firsthand for the fact when the Mark IVs, the coolant lines that are made of plastic, like the Y pieces and stuff, and it's like it's going to break. There's no question about it. It's just wind.
Yep.
So much of the stuff is made of plastic, and then of course the electronics, like you guys were mentioning with some of the stuff, that's another nightmare in itself for a 10-year-old vehicle.
So as much as we complain about plastic and crap falling apart, cars are so much more durable and longer lasting than they have ever been. And you can see the average age of the fleet in the cars registered in the United States getting older every year as evidence of that. And it does have to change your calculus.
Yeah. So you're saying we should look at 20-year-old vehicles is what I'm hearing. I agree with where you're headed here, man. I like this idea. Let's go older. Older is better.
It's kind of funny because I really don't have much objection to finding another brick, another Caprice. I really don't.
Here's the other problem. The older the car is, the more difficult it's going to be to insure, especially if you want full coverage. Right. And then there's a lot of companies that maybe don't want to cover that. Now, do you need to get classic? It becomes a nightmare. So if you stay in a 10-year window, you're still on Geico or Allstate or Nationwide's amortization tables, so you can insure the car.
Almost, I assume everybody on this call, this is going to be the 3rd to 7th to 12th car on a plan. It's not going to make a big impact to anybody. I only have 2 currently on mine. I had 3 for a while. Adding a 3rd is not going to, like, it could be a 1950s car and it's not going to make a huge difference.
Well, you got boys, and I hate to say it's going to cost double.
Yeah, I know. And which is why they're getting a manual transmission Element or a old beat up Golf. But the insurance on those is not going to be a major consideration.
It's going to be a lot.
Yeah, but we all have multiple cars. You're going to go from $2,000 to $2,800 a year. It's not going to be
what?
A big thing.
You looked lately? Dude, 30 years ago now, I was paying $2,500 a year in insurance for a 10-year-old car.
What do you pay right now in insurance for your fleet?
3 cars, it's about that with 2 drivers.
Is it only 3 that are insured right now?
Yeah, it's only 3. Why would you insure a race car? That's what track insurance is
I know.
for. That's separate.
I don't know if you had other crap lying around somewhere else.
No.
This doesn't count the 914, doesn't count the TT, doesn't count the...
No.
Okay. It's just the Pacifica and the...
Just the stuff that actually has
wagon.
tags. Yes.
Okay.
But anyway, the point is...
But you add a 4th to that, right? Let's say the 914 was stock and you added it to that, right? That's an older car. If you were to add that on there, it's not going to make it's like not going to double that or anything like that.
But you also have to factor in every state's different. Don in Texas has to go through all his inspections and registrations. California is extremely
it's
expensive.
Texas. They're just going to make sure he's got his gun rack installed and has his concealed carry permit tacked to his window.
That's another reason I like the Caprice. There's plenty of room for guns everywhere.
Oh,
seriously, exactly.
All right.
Sorry, had to go there.
But for everybody else that's listening to this, 10-year-old cars, anybody else have suggestions? Because I've got a list that we can kind of go through here if nobody wants to throw something up on the table.
I'm really torn between the enthusiast aspect of it and the practical aspect of it in trying to thread the needle between those two things so that like I can hopefully engender, I'll say engender instead of encourage, I can engender in my kid some degree of automobile enthusiast, while at the same time not feeling guilty that like I'm in some way endangering my child because I put him in a Fox body convertible Mustang.
And are you endangering your child in the Fox body, or are you endangering all the civilians and spectators? Well,
That's true. It is a Mustang after all.
That convertible Fox body is a bit of a death trap. Like, let's just call a spade a spade.
As a side note, I recommend everybody do what Eric did, and I didn't do this. Go to cars.com and try to look in that age range, like under 10 grand. It is everything from like Mercedes-Benz GLKs to like...
Yes, there's a lot of cars.
Yeah, that's what I mean by we are in a wonderful generation right now because the cars that are going back 10 years, even 20 years, are so nice compared to what all of us had as our first cars. These cars are really incredible.
If this was 500 podcasts ago, by the way, I'd have to pull out the fact that you can get an HHR from 2011 and call it a day.
We're going to get there. But I'll throw this on the table. Don, did you know, because you're a Blue Oval man, you could get a Ford Taurus Police Interceptor for $8,500.
Depending on the year, yeah, I know. Yeah, believe me, I looked at the Tauruses, but again, the fear factor of the modern Taurus is front-wheel drive, 3.5 liter.
But there's no fear factor. You've got rhino bars on the front of that thing.
You do. If you've ever actually looked at the police package Fords, they're incredible.
Big brakes, sway bars, suspension, yeah.
Oh, yeah, and there's literally a division at Ford. That's all these guys do. They develop, think about, and build police cars. That's it. But when it comes to the Taurus, if you're going for the modern one, you're looking at that 3.5 liter again, and it's going to be that funky little water pump, which all I'm getting at though is I'm looking at the 3.5. It's in the Explorer. It's in the Taurus. It's in the Flex. It's in all these front wheel drive application vehicles. I have a feeling in just a few years, we're going to start seeing these things winding up at the junkyard because people just don't want to afford to fix them. My mom and I talked about this the other day. She has the Explorer with a front wheel drive and a 3.5 liter. And I told her, the comical thing about all of this, $4,000 we paid for that water pump. I've always wanted a Range Rover. I have always had a thing for Range Rover. I've always been terrified of them because I hear these horror stories all the time. Guess what? I'm living the horror story. My wife's power window switch on the Honda went out because of my dog who kept stepping on the button and somehow broke something in power window world. Yeah, whatever it was $900 just for the part. So when I hear this, I think to myself, okay, why do we not have an older Maserati and an older Range Rover in the driveway? Why be scared now? Which goes back to the 2005 Buick LeSabre, the 85 Caprice, et cetera, et cetera. Those cars were tanks. Yes, they're built better today than they ever have been, but the parts are so much more expensive.
It's the availability. And here's my litmus test for that. And I know where Mark was going too with buy an older car. But if you go to Rock Auto and the parts list is this long, that's not the car you buy because it means you cannot service it. It makes it really, really difficult to maintain. So that's why 10 years is that sweet spot. They're still making replacement parts. People are keeping those cars on the road. And to your point, Don, the junkyard, when I grew up, that was like every other weekend we're going to find this, looking for that shit. Dan and I still do that now, looking for parts for the race car.
Good thing when it comes to the salvage yard down in Texas and the Southwest, the salvage yards there are a million times better than they here on the East Coast because the weather's better, so the cars can sit there for longer, and a lot of the guys have a lot more land.
Mm-hmm.
But the point is, junkyard is a gold mine if you know what you're doing. But after a while, even the junkyard starts to dry up and they stop buying those cars because they're too old because they're working in a 10-year window.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that 10-year window is super important to a first-time car buyer's decision-making process.
Well, and you and I talked about this off camera. We talked about the Volvos. And I'm a big Volvo fan. I've always loved Volvo. My daughter likes the Volvos. So it seems like it'd be a shoo-in. They're very safe. They have a sort of bulldogish nature to them. But you start pushing that 10-year mark, that 15-year mark. You talk about a small section of the parts catalog. I mean, there's nothing there. And if there is, you better bring your wallet because they are not going to be cheap to find parts for those Volvos.
So the Taurus was my last 3.5 liter special. The Cadillac's a 3.6 liter Camaro engine. So do you want to go into the Mopar camp or would you want to go to a car that would fit inside the Flex?
When it comes to Mopar, there's really only one car to discuss.
All right. So let's go B-spec for a moment. Rob, a car you might appreciate, the Honda Fit.
I just looked. I saw Fits are available. And at first I was scrolling through it. I'm like, oh, Mini Coopers you could get for that much. And I was like, oh, the Fit. That's basically that, but slower and better parts availability.
100%.
Mm-hmm.
The Mini is one of those you're going to pay the BMW tax on, and you have to be ready for it.
Yeah, and the Fit's the same car when it's that old for the purposes of a new driver. You can still get a manual or automatic, and they will run forever and are bigger in the inside than they seem on the outside, and so easier to parallel park. And when you're done, you can sell it for what you paid for it.
When you're done, you strip it down and you go Sunday Cup racing with Grid Life. What are you talking about? You have a built-in race car.
It's fair.
Yeah, the other one would be the RAV4, kind of the competitor to that.
Yeah, if you want to go SUV.
If I go Toyota, I go I'm almost thinking like the Scion TC or something also sort of fits this world too. You get the boxy two-door action, and you can go with the Matrix. That's the bigger version of that.
Pontiac Vibe, right?
Or Vibe and Matrix, same car.
Yeah.
Again, it's basically a Toyota, and so parts availability is easy and reliability is good.
Again, though, we're getting into that bully factor. Those cars, they're going to get bullied.
So if you don't want to get bullied around, that takes a couple other cars off my list, though, because I had the Dodge Dart on the list because you can get those for under 10K. You can also get the Chrysler 200 on that list under 10K.
I would not want that car.
I don't think anybody wanted that car. You can still get them new on dealership lots. If you're going to stay in a car, sedan, now you can start talking about Impalas. But if you want to go cheap chic, Chrysler 300 is an option with the 3.5 liter Pentastar.
That's actually not a bad idea. The 300 or the Charger, either one of them.
Yep.
I haven't seen a Charger yet scrolling through here. I've seen the other
300s all day with the 6-cylinder.
Yeah, 300s, but I haven't seen a Charger in here yet.
And they're making 300 horse, but it's heavy. I really enjoyed those as rental cars. They were smooth. They're like Paleozoic Mesozoic era Mercedes chassis. They're just nice and comfortable. You can put 4 people in it. You can put luggage in it. It's not a hatchback. It's not a truck. It's kind of like, give me a little bit of everything and you're good to go. And again, I was surprised how cheap they were.
I like that Chrysler 300. That's a great car. My dad had one of those way back. I love that car. I think it was great. Great on the highway, great cruise. That thing was a great car. And knowing that she's kind of afraid saying the cord's too fast, and kind of how Don was saying when he's driving down there 80s in the slow lane and whatnot, you're going to want to have something. I mean, I don't know if she's going to be driving on the highways, but she's going to want to have something that's going to have some oomph to it, because she's going to have to get out of the way. She's going to have to move over, do whatever, so it's, you don't want to have something that's got 110 horsepower that she puts her foot to the floor and, she's got a F-350 dually behind her, rolling coal. He's got his stacks going. He's laying on his air horn, freaking her out. It's kind of like you got to have something that's going to have some get up and go also down. But you go in, you start getting, you get Jeep Renegade, Ford Escape.
All that RAV4, CRV, every car in that class is available. Nissan Rogue, I mean, they're all the same. Yeah, you can have any of those.
Exactly.
Well, and I'm glad you went there, because I also considered the Jeep Patriot.
As a car guy, I hate the existence of that along with the Compass, so I can't in good conscience recommend any of that.
The Patriot
crap.
looks awesome if you slam it down and put it on big wheels.
Yeah, if you do a bunch of stuff to it that turns it not into a Patriot, then it's great. Yeah, that's true for a lot of things.
Well, because it's a neon, right?
Yeah, but no, it's like a Jeep Liberty. Like, don't.
Yeah.
Get a Grand Cherokee or a Wrangler, stay out of that.
Exactly. Now, that's another option, Don. If you want to go a little bit bigger, the Grand Cherokee is a very similarly appointed interior to the 300, especially in that age range when it became the later WK2s, shares a lot of the same parts. It's the same Pentastar. You're going to get the same gas mileage. It weighs about the same as the 300. So you kind of have your choice. Do you want the sedan or do you want the SUV? Do you want the all-wheel drive or do you just want two-wheel drive? So the Grand Cherokee is definitely something to consider. And I think they're quite a handsome looking SUV. Now you can go a little ways back. Brad had an early WK2, which was a little bit more stodgy and Mercedes with a more utilitarian interior, if you like it, a little bit more boxy, but shares the same chassis. Now, Brad, the only thing you worried about was the Hemi tip.
No, I didn't have any issues with that, but I had premature water pump failure, which is known problem with those Hemis, but it was only a $700 fix.
And that's on the V8.
That was the V8.
But the V6, those things are bulletproof.
The early Pentastars, they had problems, but they worked out the kinks. So now the Pentastar is a really good motor.
Cost is an issue. Instead of going with the Grand Cherokee, just a regular Cherokee would be a little bit cheaper.
Yeah, that's true. But I will say the Grand Cherokee is super easy to work on. It's built like a truck, just wrenches and screwdrivers and hammers, and you're good to go. I mean, it's not hard to work on at all.
The nice thing about those Jeeps specifically, it's like we were saying early in the conversation, the beauty of having a truck, you don't have to worry about it too much. It'll take a beating and keep on going.
Yeah.
The Jeep is in that same boat. They are built fairly solidly.
The Jeep to me is like a Swiss Army knife. It's the reason I chose one, and I love it, and I have zero complaints, knock on wood. It's been really trouble-free. It's something definitely to put on the list. Now, you're probably going to pay a little bit more for a grand. You're probably going to be 10, 12, 14, right, but you're going to get something lower mileage, probably adult maintained. It's not a bad buy for what it is if you stretch your wallet just a little bit. But the 300 comes in under 10 grand pretty easily.
Yeah, the sister to that, of course, would be the Durango, the Dodge side of the family.
Yes.
Basically the same exact car, just a different body.
Correct.
All three of those are good ideas.
Now, if you notice, I stuck to a no turbo rule except for the Lincoln, which had the EcoBoost.
Yeah, and I agree with that.
But I'm also staying away from V8s because I want to think a little bit economically. To Mark's point from earlier, I don't want to bankrupt my kid every third day at the gas pump at $4 a gallon because you got to run premium in your Hemi or whatever it is. So a V6 is this nice compromise between torque and horsepower and being able to rev up and go and not be a slug in traffic, because a Honda Fit, as fun as that is for us enthusiasts, rowing the gears and burning it up at 8,200 RPM with the VTEC on and all that stuff, that's fantastic, but it can't get out of its own way. So a nice 3.5 liter, let's just say V6, is a great all-around engine. It's not going to set the world on fire from an economy standpoint, but it's also not going to bankrupt you every time you go to the pump.
When we were kids, one of the good starting cars was like a Saturn because it was all plastic. Because I'm thinking any kid is going to be door ding central. And so like you just sort of pop it out, and therefore dings weren't a thing. You didn't really have to worry about a lot of that kind of stuff. Thinking about which of these cars have easier repairability, which ones have like the trim stripe along the door that sort of helps prevent some of those door dings and those kind of things. For some of the minor crud that's going to happen in a high school parking lot, right, in a college parking lot as they drive into it, because at some point that car is going to be in your driveway, and as a car guy, having the beat to hell scratched up car that your kid comes home and it's gonna be like, what did you teach that kid? My wife's dad is a huge car guy, and every time we come in, if my wife's gotten a scratch on her car, he literally is like, I'm almost ashamed to have you park in my driveway. Like, what did I teach you? This should have been taken care of.
And that goes back to the point earlier about the German cars and why I'm not recommending a single one of them. Because as enthusiasts, we buy a GTI and I got to have the blue iridescent pearl magic paint and blah, 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 blah. And you buy that as a hand-me-down from somebody. If you want to do paint correction, open your wallet, because it's not just red or blue or white like a Honda or Toyota or whatever it is. And I'm not saying they don't have their special colors, but the German stuff is always sort of over the top. And to replace a fender on a GTI, if you get into a scrap, let's just say something even happens in the parking lot or you get hit by a shopping cart or whatever, how many Jeeps were produced in a single year versus GTIs? You can go get a fender for $20 versus $250 or $2,000 for something that is quote unquote exotic, like a GTI would be in comparison.
Bringing back the 300, the Charger, the Flex, you have a slab side. You have a very flat-sided car. They show everything. Every little thing that can happen on one of those cars, you're going to see it because it's so flat. That's where we kind of go back to, there were Jeep Cherokees, I don't know, Grand Cherokees. They had plastic cladding on the side. The Chevy Avalanche invented the whole concept of that.
Some of the Grand Cherokees did too. That's what I was trying to remember if that
the earlier ones.
The early versions all had that plastic,
Like
which made it
90s.
easier because it was ridged in a certain way. And
The Aztec perfected plastic clad.
It was ahead of its time.
my Scirocco, my mom's, GTI and GLI and such. I mean, they all had that nice black strip of rubber on the side, which works so well for preventing the bullshit dings. And actually, my current 2012 GTI, every time I look at it, I'm like, I wish this had that little raised door ding bar on it, because otherwise, every little scratch that somebody's like, you see it. Whereas if you had that little bit of rubber, it just preserves it that much better from that sort of stupid crap.
We were talking about kids driving later, but there's also a lot of kids that are a little bit more earth conscious or eco-friendly. I started thinking about, are there any hybrids available for under 10K? The only thing that comes up on the list is probably going to be very, very obvious, but you can get Priuses for that kind of money if that's what you're into. From what I understand, some of those second and third gen Priuses, a lot of them are just unbreakable. I mean, they just run forever and they don't seem to have a ton of problems.
Much to the sadness of everybody who's stuck owning one of them. That's a different definition of slow.
True, but then there's the other side of that makes me worried, in that the people that have their Priuses and love them aren't getting rid of them. So if you're selling a Prius, why are you selling it? What's wrong with it? So that was my only word of caution when I saw those come up on the list. And there's other cars like that where you're like, that car is so good. What's the story here? Why are you getting rid of it? There's reasons and seasons for everything. Usually Prius folks are very, very faithful,
If we're going to go with the 10-year mark, the Camry had a hybrid during that time.
Yeah, anything in the Toyota family that's a hybrid. If you're eco-conscious and not interested in a diesel or anything like that, and you want to save money on gas, I would definitely look in that camp. As much as an enthusiast, those cars, they irk me a little bit, but I don't find anything wrong with them. They're just stylistically, whatever. But for their purpose, for their reason, they make 1,000% sense.
Camrys are known to be just a plain Jane vehicle.
In the dictionary next to car, it's a picture of a Camry.
Yeah, right, 100%.
But I recently saw one of the new TRD Camrys and had to do a double take because it caught my eye and I was like, that looked sharp. And I didn't think I would ever say that about a Camry.
It needs to be a GR Camry. When they come out with that, then you got my attention. So there is another car that I think we've avoided, and it's sort of the last one on my list of cars under 10 grand I would give a kid, that I think are sort of not Tonka toys, but they're sort of, you're looking for a car that's bulletproof, right? You're looking for an engine that's bulletproof. Like we said, a car that can take maybe a slight fender bender, that can take a couple door dings, that can live through high school shenanigans, can go through college. And there's one car, and we joke about this on the drive-through pretty often. They're absolutely indestructible. You see them everywhere you turn around. And that's the Nissan Altima.
I have to disagree slightly there, because if it has the 3.5 liter V6 in them, they were known because the Kelly converter was part of the downpipe.
Yeah.
Right.
If it had enough miles on it, it would start to suck debris back in and it would wipe the rings on it. And then you had issues with the engine.
Yeah, but those people still kept driving them.
Yeah, that's why they were smoking.
Down in Texas, they're going to think you're running drugs from Mexico.
I was about to say, you also have to not live in Maryland. So if you live in Maryland, you have one of those, it's probably a temporary tag, and you've probably slammed it into a telephone pole or multiple other cars and then ran away.
But it's still running.
Every accident in DC is like a Nissan Altima with temporary Maryland tags.
Yes.
Like every one of them. And they're probably all the same car.
They're all like the original Eleanor from Gone in 60 Seconds. You just cannot kill those things.
I know.
At the end of nuclear holocaust, there's going to be cockroaches in Nissan Altimas. So that's a solid buy. They are indestructible.
And remember, too, the 3.5 liter was a fantastic engine. When that thing came out, it blew everybody away, how quick it was, how rev happy it was.
They put that in the Maxima first.
Yeah.
Those Maximas were super fast with that. I buddy with one of those. Those were crazy quick.
But when the Altima came out, they also had the 2.5 liter, the
Yes.
4-cylinder. And if you drove one of those, believe me, you were not disappointed. That little guy would really get up and cook. And you didn't quite have all the problems that the 3.5 liter
That was the
did.
same 2.5 they ended up putting in the little the Sentra SER, right?
Yes.
It's the same motor,
That's it.
yeah, which was pretty peppy in that.
Kind of agree with what you're saying, though. There's a certain
Je ne sais quoi.
aura that goes with the Altima ownership. And believe me, when I worked at Stillen, I was introduced to these cars at Motor Trend when they first came out with the big Altima 3.5 liter, blah, blah, blah. I was hooked. Oh my God, I thought these were the greatest cars in the world. And when I worked at Stillen, we had the orange car, which you can look that up on Google if you want to. It's the Stillen Orange Altima. It's an incredible car. Amazing cars, they really are. But today, as life goes on, and sadly, I think it's most of the Nissan family, and it's really weird, but they're very accident prone.
Nissan only sells Altimas and then the Z. That's it. Because the Murano's a Taltima, right? And the Rogue it's all the same.
I mean, to be clear, I had a Pathfinder for a while that was spectacular, but that's different.
All right. So that kind of rounded out my punch list. I think the only honorable mention, and I said I was going to talk about German cars, but the only one I brought up was the American-made Passat with the 5-cylinder, because you can get that with DSG, with the automatic, or with the 5 or 6-speed manual in that. Those 5-cylinders, they've been perfected. They've got 30 years of evolution in them. They will literally run forever.
They were rust prone, though. Those Passats were, I don't know why, but like not the Jettas, not the Golfs, but those Passats were rust prone.
That is the Achilles heel to the American-made Passat. But as far as the sheet metal around the engine is amazing.
Yeah, the engine's fine, yeah.
That's the only reason I was like, this is an honorable mention. If you had to have something German, that would be your option. And those ranged wildly from like $5,000 to $9,000. They were all over the map. And it was just like, okay, it couldn't really pinpoint an average there.
As an honorable mention, it's not bad because once again, Don's in Texas. The rust issue won't be near as bad.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. That sort of rounds out my punch list. Anybody else have something that they came across that would fit the bill here?
I have a joke list.
I mean, I do too, but we'll get to that in a minute.
My generic answer to what car I wish I could get my kids, because my brother had one but stupidly sold it because I wanted to give it, was a manual transmission Honda Element.
Ooh.
Yeah. Enough room to haul crap. It's a Honda. Like, he doesn't know shit about cars. Ran it into the ground. The car still worked perfectly fine when he sold it because that's the way they work. Great on road trips, fine on gas. They have that funky 2 doors. So you have to have like the side doors. So you have to have friends who are comfortable climbing the back. You can sort of help people move, but you don't have to. You can sort of have 4 passengers, but you can also fold the seats up into the wall and say, no, I'm taking my mountain bike, or I'm taking this, or I'm off to hockey practice and I have all my crap in it. And it's high enough off the ground, has enough safety features, has all-wheel drive, has the manual transmission, and is still kind of cool and funky and different and isn't going to get boxed around by trucks. Like, to me, if I could find one, like, that's the perfect starting vehicle right there, is a manual transmission Element.
And it's an ultimate Halloween car. If you get it in silver, you put brown foam, it looks like a toaster. If you get an orange, it's the Great Pumpkin, you know, the whole 9 yards.
I got a friend in Boulder who just bought one. She found one because she's married, but she frequently goes by herself on climbing trips. And she's like, I needed something I could sleep in and put all my crap in that would never break down and could drive over the passes in Colorado and be perfectly fine, because she lives in Boulder. And she's like, it's wonderful. She's taken it all last winter, all the way to, Crested Butte, all over the place, and says, like, can't find a better car. And they're cheap. They're well in the price range.
How hard is it to find the elements in manual?
It's not as hard because there's sort of bulletproof engines on those things because they're used in everything.
It's a Civic motor.
Yeah, and so it's not hard to find those things. My friend in Boulder said she could choose between like 10 of them when she bought hers, and that's out in the mountains out there. And I've seen them around here. If you want to go newer, you could also go with the Toyota
Matrix.
Nope, like an Element.
Venza?
No, Venza's too new.
The XB?
The FJ.
Oh,
The FJ,
oh,
yeah.
no.
So you can find like a 10-year-old FJ. In manuals, they're actually cheaper than they are in automatics. I have a buddy who owns one who's going to sell it, and I was going to buy it off him, and then he's like, I decided to keep it. And so, but I mean, it was going to be sub 10K. And both Elements and FJs can go either way. But
Correct.
in terms of like the all-wheel drive, safety aspect, a little higher up, and also less people space, but enough space, I still like that class of vehicle. They're taller. I don't know. That class seems good for first cars.
And they're both not so high that they're going to be prone to tip over.
No, it's not a Wrangler, but it's also, yeah, it's not quite a Subaru Outback or Forester or Impreza. It's a little bit higher than that. But as we said, with all the trucks and big SUVs in the road, it's nice to have that little bit more height for the younger drivers.
I will say, Rob, you hit something on the head there. I've teased my wife for years now that my girls will get two choices, and they will both be manual. They get to pick from either a Wrangler or a Veloster, one or the other. That's it, because both are extremely uncomfortable, to your point, but they can kind of go anywhere. So if you're going south, the Veloster's awesome. If you're going north, the Jeep will take you anywhere you need to go.
My kids love Jeeps. We have a buddy with a farm down in Charlottesville that has a Wrangler he keeps there, and we get down there and immediately they bug my buddy. They're like, Mr. Paul, take us in the Jeep, because he'll just go up the sides of things, and they love it.
Yeah, I gotta be real blunt here with that. When you brought up the Element, I don't think I've ever even thought about the Element, and I gotta tell you, that really struck me. I thought that's a damn good car. It's a Honda. It'll run forever. It's utilitarian. The interior is completely plastic. The side body cladding, like we're talking about door dings in a high school parking lot, backpacks, whatever, it's not gonna get too damaged up. That's actually a really sharp idea. It really is. The Element really turned me on. I thought that was a good idea.
That was, literally my first thought. I mean, looking through this list, I mean, strangely, you can get a ton of Odysseys in this price range, but if you want the giant minivan. But for anybody who's seen Deadpool and Wolverine, you can't really suggest an Odyssey without laughing. And if you haven't seen it, you'll get that joke when you watch it.
Also, the Odyssey is a horrible driving car.
Yes, it's a miserable, which again, if you've seen the movie, it gets funnier and funnier. But yes, the Element, I think, is sort of the key. You can get a Pilot in that same price range.
What was that? The Passport, which was the Isuzu Rodeo?
Yeah, but I think the Element just makes more sense for that sort of phenomenal college car.
Yeah.
Right? Like you're moving from a dorm room to off-campus housing. Like you don't need the pickup. You just fold those seats up and throw all the crap in it. Do a couple runs if you want.
Well, and the nice thing too, you're not going to have friends banging on your door saying, "Hey, help me move."
No, because it looks like a small box.
It does.
My brother's wife had one teacher in Massachusetts, and she's like, I needed a car I could put a full timpani in, and it doesn't look that big, but had no problem fitting full-size timpanis in that you can't fit in most wagons. You need a pickup. Even minivans have trouble with it.
Right.
But
I'm betting, judging by its boxy nature, it's got to be the easiest thing in the world to park.
Yeah, they are, because they're shorter than you think. They're not, the wheelbase
It's a Civic.
Yeah.
But nice and slow and boxy, and I don't know, big.
My neighbor's daughter was given an Element by her grandparents when she was like 17, and she drove that thing till it had like 380,000 miles on it before they finally decided to just sell it. And it was still running, but they decided she didn't want it no more. And I think she used it at least 2 to 3 years into college before she switched vehicles. Mileage wise, they'll go forever as long as the maintenance is done. Had a couple little things here and there that helped them fix on it, but it was nothing extreme and major that broke the bank.
They're easy to work on too. Real simple cars to work on.
And I think we can safely assume, just by virtue of being a Honda, being a Civic, blah, 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 you're not going to have any trouble finding parts for that thing, because even though the Element is a little bit weird unto itself, so the body parts might be a little hard to find, but everything else mechanically, chassis, etc., has got to be pretty simple because it's all just in the Honda family. Yeah, okay, maybe that, let's just say for a number, they built 100,000 Elements. They built 1 million Civics.
Yep.
So you've got that million that you still have to serve with those parts. The Element just takes advantage of it from the bottom, and it just happens to be able to still get parts for
And
it.
there's actually some hot rod Elements if you look and you want to spend a little extra. What is it? The Element SE, which is like their version of like a Type R or whatever it is. And it came with different wheels. And there were some options in there in the last couple of years of that thing. If that's what you're into and you're geeking out, take a look at the packages. Now, I had a friend that owned one of those, like the hot rod one. The only thing I thought was weird was the stadium seating that they had inside, where the passengers in the back are up higher than the front. So that way, the idea was that if you're talking, then you don't get drowned out or something like that. I was like, okay, cool. To me, it was a little awkward, but to Rob's point, if you're a hobbyist of any hobby, you just take them out, move stuff around. What was the joke that you can just power wash the inside of it because it's like all rubber made?
You can hose out the interior. We've taken it to beach frisbee tournaments, and literally afterwards, you'd hose out the whole interior and just call it a day.
With the fact of trucks being in Texas, it's not uncommon for people to be driving them, but if you don't want her to get into a full size, technically, I guess compared to older trucks that would be considered full size, but something like a Colorado, since they don't like to make the S10s or anything anymore. And you're worried about the rear end on it being light, but the majority of the Colorados nowadays are crew cab. So a lot of that weight is very similar to that of like a crossover or an SUV for the weight displacement on the chassis. Like Honda did like the Ridgeline. There's those options as well if you're looking for something. We've mentioned most of the others that I had thought of.
Oh, we forgot one. It's super special.
The biggest I would go is sort of like that. The element size is similar, but like the RAV4, the CRV style sort of world. But I find if I go up my front door right now, there are 30 of those, right? There are 30 Mazda CX-5s, CRVs, RAV4s. They're everywhere. I don't like having what everybody else has. So my brain immediately is like back to those, the FJ and the Element and some of the stuff that's a little more fun. And if it sounds like you don't want the smaller cars. I think a lot of the smaller cars are awesome in this price range for those kids, right? I mean, as we said, the Scion TC or the smaller Golfs, the Honda Fit is an amazing car for that, right? You can get some of those. That size car, I think, is great. But to your point, if they're all driving around with people with F-250s, it's not going to work. You need something a little bigger. And again, it brings me back to that Element FJ pseudo truck-ish sort of, but still cool and still small enough to park and not worry about, but can hold its own and not get pushed around.
Well, I found a car that we've all forgotten about, and it fits in our window because it ended at the beginning of our window. You're not going to get bullied because people are going to be too busy laughing at you. You're not going to have to worry about being like everybody else on the road because you haven't seen one of these in a while. It's roomy. You can haul people. You can haul things. It's versatile. Some would argue that it's stylish. And if you got the right package, peppy enough. So for your consideration, I will throw out the PT Cruiser.
I hate to admit it, but I thought about that.
Mark's like falling out of his seat.
I thought it was HHR. I'd mentioned that one earlier. Yeah.
I did. I thought about the PT and I thought about the HHR. I think both of them are cool. I got to use both of them at Motor Trend. Michelle and I actually had one for multi-thousand-mile journey around California in HHR. We loved it. We really did. It was a fantastic little car.
The PT surprisingly had more space than it looked like from the outside.
And yeah, I don't think people will bully it. I think they're scared of it.
Exactly.
I don't know how you're going to respond. So I'm going to give you some space because you're a weirdo. But it's funny going to either one. The HHR has, if you're worried about performance, you've got the SS. And that is one serious little machine, especially if you have the 6-speed manual transmission. That is a really, really fast car. On the Chrysler side of life, you got the GT 2.4-liter turbo, but we're breaking that rule of turbocharging.
They were known for the turbo seal inside getting bad to where oil and coolant would mix.
The same as the Neon, yeah.
Yeah.
It'd be fun, but it is an element that is going to break at some point.
Versus like the 300 and the Jeep and some of the bigger stuff that we talked about. If you're looking at an element, I would really consider, especially in the right paint scheme, a PT Cruiser. She might enjoy that. It's different. It's quirky, but on the same token, it doesn't have enough power to get you into trouble. It's pretty insurable.
You can't hose it out.
No, you can't. That's for sure.
You'll get a convertible, though.
That's true. You can't get a PT convertible. I forgot about that.
Yeah, those were kind of cool. And I kind of like those.
Mark's making this face like he just wants to hang up the call. Like, all right, lay it on me.
We're in an interesting spot. I'm definitely not a PT Cruiser fan, in spite of it being the TARDIS of vehicles, apparently, according to Mountain Man Dan. And honestly, I think that this whole conversation's gone in an interesting direction that I wouldn't have anticipated prior to coming into it, where I'm now legitimately thinking about buying my kid a Honda helmet.
Rob is definitely hitting it out of the park tonight.
Right. An FJ Cruiser is totally cooler, but it is a challenging space to try to operate in. And so I am thinking that, at least for my kids, I struggle going back more than 20 years, that kind of 2000 to 2020 time range. In that space, I want something with a little higher belt line that's going to take a hit from another vehicle with a higher belt line. And so, you just you add these requirements up and it starts to winnow the list down, and it takes out a lot of the cool stuff that I love as an enthusiast, but I struggle to put my 16-year-old inside of. And so is the Magic Spot one of these mid-sized SUVs that we've kind of keep coming back to and talking about? Yeah, sure. Maybe I just don't get rid of my X5 and my that kid that drives their dad's old X5. I don't want that to be the situation, but I don't know. Maybe that's the most pragmatic situation. And
those OZs are going to come off that thing real quick, though. I guarantee it.
Yeah, okay, fine. Maybe they don't need Italian wheels. But I've gotten more out of this conversation than I've contributed to it. It has made me think a lot more about it than maybe originally I was.
Here's a question, Don. Is it going to be your decision, or is she going to have input in this?
Oh, I think there'll be input from both Michelle and Caitlin.
Yeah, I mean, all three of you sitting down, going through Auto Tempest or whatever, and kind of, hey, what about this? And try and feel it out. Try and gauge. To make her happy.
Yeah.
Obviously, you put in your 2 cents and everything like that, but it kind of boils down to is you kind of want your kid to like the car.
She's interesting because she has quirky taste. I mean, she really does. She is a bit of a car gal. Caitlin is similar to Rob in that she sees too many of a certain car, she suddenly gets turned off by them. She doesn't really want to have anything. And yet, flip side of the coin, she likes Mustangs. Mustangs are belly button cars. Everybody has one, but she likes them. So that it's kind of interesting. But yeah, that's where, again, I think the element would really be interesting. That one, Rob really, really struck a chord with that car because it is durable. It is tough. It does have that bulldog sort of nature where you're not quite sure, can you bully this thing around psychologically? It's going to last forever. It's all wheel drive. You can get a manual transmission if you want. You hose out the interior. It swallows up grand pianos, no problem. It's really, really an interesting choice. And it's quirky enough that somebody like Caitlin would probably enjoy this car. It's different enough. You're not going to see another one in the high school parking lot. Her other friends are going to really enjoy it.
As is tradition with all of our What Should I Buy episodes, we're going to do a little lightning round here to close out all the things we spoke about. But this one's a little bit different. As enthusiasts, as dads, we're going to play the selfish dad lightning round. And that means if you were 16 today and handed $10,000 to buy your first car, what would it be? And it could be from any era, any age, any decade. You got 10 grand to spend on your first car. What are you going to buy?
Based on today's prices, okay, I'll have to think about this.
Can you do something like you buy something, but you're going to build it up?
That's how this game works. So you just go ahead.
If you want a Corvette engine Miata and you can do it for 10 grand, have at it.
I like him.
All right, who wants to go first?
I've got a list of 6 cars.
Oh, Brad.
geez.
Brad coming in swinging. Go ahead.
I'm going to go back through the years. All of these I found for less than 10 grand. I'm going to start with the newest car and work my way back to the oldest car.
All right.
So the newest car is a 2015 Lexus RX 350. You can probably get a Lexus RX 300 for even cheaper. 2013 Land Rover LR4. I'm ignoring mileage.
And maintenance, because you're going to need 10 grand of maintenance on that Land Rover right away.
Well, here's where it starts to get fun. A 2008 Porsche Cayenne.
Those are surprisingly cheap, by the way.
2003 Mercedes CL 500, one of my all-time favorite cars. I love those cars so much.
The suppository model?
Yes.
Yes. It's the big giant Tic Tac. I love it. Here's the one I think Don's going to resonate with the most. 1995 Jaguar XJ Vanden Plus.
100%.
And then an 86 944. All of these are under 10 grand.
There you go.
I love Brad's recommendations. You can't get a 944 turbo anymore for 10 grand. Is it just not that? I'm sure that's not a thing.
Oh, yeah, it's not possible.
Yeah.
You can, but you have to fix it up. My brother-in-law has one and just went to 944 Fest out at, what's the track in Ohio?
Mid-Ohio.
Not Mid-Ohio, the smaller
Nelson Ledges.
Nelson Ledges, the dead flat one. So he has a 944 turbo. He got it for less than 10, but has to put another like 5 in to get it primo. It's now beautiful. Like it's a gorgeous, fun car. But you can't get a well-sorted one for under 10 right now.
Fair enough.
15, you can pull it off. 10 won't work.
William's buying a Mondial T for 10 grand, right?
Yeah, and put 50 into it to keep it running.
All right. I mean, I think buying an English car as a 16-year-old, pretty low income, is a pretty horrible idea.
But you're 16. You are the epitome of horrible ideas at that age.
Yeah, you're not making good decisions.
This is an optimum scenario where I'm taking my 43-year-old self to being 16 in 2024 and I get 10 grand to buy a car. I think it's American muscle. It has to be something that's fun, fast, easy to maintain, and sustainable. Probably tough on gasoline. I'll give you that.
You can get a Cobra from 99, apparently.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love an old Predator Cobra. Prior to COVID, those were totally doable for 10 grand, but that's not true anymore. So I think I would probably look for an SS Camaro just because, the V8 there is just in a different class in that price category than the Mustangs. Sorry for the Ford people. I'm not really affiliated one way or the other. I love them both equally. going to say in this generation, if I've got 10 grand, it's probably an SS Camaro. And I might not make it to graduation. It's a horrible idea. I'm never buying that for my 16-year-old kid. But if I was 16 and I had 10 grand, that's totally what I buy.
Kind of agree with Mark. The Z28, when did that body style come out? Like 90?
The LT1, you can do better than an LT1.
Doing LS1 was 98 to 2002.
Yeah, I mean that still is one hell of a package for the money. I mean, what you're getting in that car, it's a lot of car. It really is. And yeah, you're right. You might not make it to graduation. I had a friend in high school who had two. He had the RS was the car to have back then.
Really slow. That's what that stood for.
Really slow. Car was actually very, very scary, quick, fast. He wrecked two of them, challenged over what the car can do. But yeah, I think you're going to be hard pressed to go bad with one of those Z28s. The Mustang, always a good option. 16, 10 grand. I think I'd find a Mustang GT or a Camaro Z28.
V8 manual. So either Mustang, C4 Vet, or Camaro. Oh, yeah. I'm killing myself before I get to graduation.
You're going to look good doing it.
Rob, are you in the same camp? 10 grand? You're 16 again?
I've always wanted a V8 Mustang because I love the sound of it, but I don't think I would choose it. It's just not in my nature. I'd want to have one to drive, but I wouldn't want to own one, if that makes sense, because I wouldn't take it. So just scrolling through, the first one that jumped out at me is you can get a Fiesta ST for under 10 grand, which is a pretty ridiculously fun choice. If I lived where I lived when I was 16, my answer would have been either a WRX or a Wrangler. I want the WRX because I grew up in Massachusetts and I wanted to go just sliding around mountain roads and rally style driving. Even now, I have friends who own a house in Davis, West Virginia, and the guy with the Mini Countryman will be like, Rob, you know what you're doing. Here, take the key. Then I just slide up the mountain roads and have a complete blast. I love that feeling of just sliding the cars up those roads, and the WRX fits that bill really well. The other one growing up again in Massachusetts is I always as a kid wanted a Wrangler. I loved the idea of I could go skiing in the mountains with it, and then I could go to the beach and take off the top and the doors and fold the windshield down and cruise around in it. It's a pretty big range, but one of probably a Wrangler or a WRX are my two top choices for those reasons. But I cannot possibly disagree or have any shade whatsoever on the people choosing the V8, because even now as I drive sort of sportier cars and love them, and my dad's got a 911 S seat, air cooled, that I drive around when I get a chance to. I still roll down the windows to listen to somebody in a V8 Mustang just rev. Just the sound of that just makes me happy, and I'd love to have one of those under my right foot for a little while. Don't know if I'd want that as much as I'd want to be sliding around roads in a WRX or off-roading in a Wrangler.
All right, Dan, did we buy you enough time, or are you just going to say some year plus square body?
Of course, I would always add to the square body collection. But so here's the thing. I have to say, I'm glad we weren't doing this 3 years ago when the used car market was insane.
Then you could buy an old Nissan, and that's about it.
Yeah. So I'm glad that the market has corrected some. But the 16-year-old me, back when I was 16, it would have been that 68 Camaro. But that not being the option, modern day me, if I was 16 today, I definitely like the idea of WS6 9802 Trans Ams. I like the Trans Ams better than the Camaros. Also, I love the CTS-V with the 6-speed.
Can you get those for 10K?
No.
I haven't seen one yet. If I saw one,
I had to window shop for them every so often. They normally need a little bit of work, but you can get them at that price.
A little bit of work.
I will say, to Rob's point there, I feel like we've all been doing this incorrectly. We were all going to cars.com, where we really need to hang out, is Dan's favorite site, Facebook Marketplace. You can find a treasure trove of shit on Facebook Marketplace.
You mean Craigslist?
I swear, that's where we need to be for all the fun stuff.
I agree. I did find a Quattroporte on Auto Trader, by the way, for under 10K, a Maserati. But you're right. My brain was like, I should be going to Craigslist and I should be going to Facebook Marketplace. And then all of us are like, oh, I'll take a 986 911, or I'll take a RS5 that for some reason somebody misposted at a different number. I mean,
they're all 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Exactly. Me, when I was 16, though, I did try to buy a 914 and still kick myself that I didn't buy it, because that would have been a dream car back then that you can't get for 10K now. Otherwise, that would be on my list.
Well, I'll wow you guys with my selfish dad. If I could be 16 again with what I know now for 10 grand, it would have to be black, is the 3.8 liter Hyundai Genesis Coupe.
That's a fast, fun car. Genesis are pretty cool. Those are fun cars.
At 16 and I got 10 grand to blow on a car, something different in the high school parking lot for sure. And on that bombshell, Brad, it's time to take us home.
It's a tough call to make on behalf of a young driver. Not only are the economics of the situation a challenge or an additional burden to this particular type of car buying, we hope that this episode gives you some food for thought. And if you'd like to continue the conversation or expand on some of the topics here, don't be shy. Check out our Break Fix Podcast Facebook group or Discord, where you can get in contact with the panelists you heard here tonight. And I want to thank our panel for another great What Should I Buy debate. Oh, we haven't heard from Mike Crutchfield, and it's a shame. We've run out of time. We'll have to get to him next time on the next What Should I Buy?
Well, guys, for most of the general public, it's safe to assume that in their lifetime, they will probably own a total of 5 cars max per person. And that's based on our very scientific method of talking to non-car friends and asking about their car buying history. But as we talked about earlier, it's those first impressions that are lasting impressions. So helping to pick that right first car is really important to the future of your petrol heads and their story as they look back on what they imprinted on. So remember, everyone has a story, and it's this point, this very moment, when you decide on that first car that's going to set the trajectory of where their story is going to go. Consider that when you're purchasing a car for your first time driving.
Well, thank you guys. This has been helpful.
Was it, Don? Did you get something out of this?
It was. I think Rob hit it out of the park. Actually, really feeling a gravitational pull toward that Honda. The question is, can we find one? Can we afford it? And is the wife and daughter on board with it?
I very much appreciate this, and I look forward to getting back together with y'all very, very soon. Obviously, we do these all the time.
This is a blast. I feel like it's both been only a day, and yet it's been a decade since I was last on. And last time it was a lot of more HHR talk, just to be clear.
Yes. But we've matured since those days, Rob.
All right. Well, thank you guys. Take care.
Thank
you
boys.
as well. And make sure you got to make sure you report back with what she ends up getting.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, will do.
We hope you enjoyed another awesome episode of Break Fix Podcast, brought to you by Grand Touring Motorsports. If you'd like to be a guest on the show or get involved, be sure to follow us on all social media platforms at Grand Touring Motorsports. And if you'd like to learn more about the content of this episode, be sure to check out the follow-on article at gtmotorsports.org. We remain a commercial-free and no annual fees organization through our sponsors, but also through the generous support of our fans, families, and friends through Patreon. For as little as $2.50 a month, you can get access to more behind-the-scenes action, additional pit stop minisodes, and other VIP goodies, as well as keeping our team of creators fed on their strict diet of Fig Newtons, gummy bears, and Monster. So consider signing up for Patreon today at www.patreon.com/GT Motorsports. And remember, without you, none of this would be possible.